So, my name is Shlomo Seidenfeld, and Moshe, an old friend of Sinai's, asked me sort of to kick off, initiate this zikaron for our good friend, and we also have some family members, for Sinai Meir ben Moshe. His neshama should have an aliyah, and still a bit stunned by Sinai's Petira, even though I must say, to my deep regret, we were not in touch with each other, and our lives, we were not sharing our lives with each other, but there was a bond that was forged many years ago, a deep bond. I'd like to speak a little bit about that, about Sinai. I sort of want to open with a ha'ara that came to me on a flight to Eretz Yisrael. For a different shiva. And actually, it might not have been Eretz Yisrael, but I was going to a tragic shiva, and I wanted to prepare something to say. And this is the idea that came to me 30,000 feet in the air, when you're closest to the to the emes. So there's a custom. I mean, this is not shloshim. We wanted it to be shloshim, and it didn't work out. But there's a custom on shloshim, 30 days after a death, for people to come together and for there to be a siyum. And sometimes it's a siyum mishnayos, sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's literally a siyum hashas, where different people take on masechtas to learn during that month. And over the course of that month, either all of Mishnayos is completed or the Gemara is completed. It's a siyum, and then on Shabbos, and then on Shloshim, there's a siyum. So it occurred to me, I wanted to understand beyond the obvious that we're learning in the memory, and learning is always the greatest way to perpetuate the memory of a neshama, and for that neshama to continue to influence the world. Beyond that, I wanted to understand this custom in a little bit of a deeper way. And a thought occurred to me that seems just very obvious. And that is, again, the siyum is a completion of something. So to do a siyum on shloshim, perhaps what's being conveyed is this, that death isn't the end of life, it's the completion of a life. And it's especially poignant to that point when someone dies seemingly, although we don't even refer to death this way, early. Earlier than we would have anticipated. And that was a big part of the shock here. And yet, Sinai completed his life. Sinai entered my life. I think it was 1980. It was my first year in Chaim Berlin, in Beis Medrash in Chaim Berlin. It was his first year. We came from very, very different worlds and different hairstyles, that's for sure. And Sinai, but we had this immediate, we were sort of drawn to each other. It's hard to explain when that happens, why it happens. But we were drawn to each other. Part of it, we were both out-of-towners, we were in the dorm. Out-of-towners have a whole different sort of energy about them than New Yorkers. So we were drawn to each other along with some other out-of-towners in Chaim Berlin. And that really started our relationship. We were roommates for quite a while. And I've worked most of that out in therapy, but we were roommates for quite a while. And I want to sort of splice together some just random thoughts, and and impressions, and it's not something that you think of as you are living, but when you're looking back at a life, somehow, they come to you. I think what I was most impressed by in Sinai, I would say two things. Number one, no matter what life threw at him, his faith was unshaken. And, every life has its share of challenges. Sinai, when we were together and when he was living in Flatbush, I don't know if you remember this, there was a fire in his house that completely destroyed the living space that he lived in. And literally, and I remember eerily walking through the next day, his place, it was during the winter, so can you imagine, after the water cannons, put out the fire, the next day everything was frozen. And you walked into his house and it felt like another eerie world, frozen. And I walked through with him and it was just, it felt eerie, that's the best word. And I never ever heard him ever at that time and throughout his life complain, really. And that is an amazing midah to have. I don't know, I don't remember whether it's something that impressed me in the moment, but as I'm looking back at his life and at my time with him, that's something that sticks out. Something else that sticks out, and we were just talking about it, is you had to earn Sinai's respect. He didn't just give it out. But I can tell you that I think that the midah, I think that drew me to him was his, despite the environment that he moved into, he came from being a left-wing socialist, passionate about being Jewish, proud about being Jewish. He ended up in a base medrash in Brooklyn. And despite that, despite his new sort of like life and environment, he never lost his respect for everybody, regardless of your observance level, ethnicity. He just had he just had this faith, not only in the Rabbi Shalom, but faith in humanity. And it's not so easy. Let me tell you, it's not so easy because quite often when you find yourself in certain environments, there is a tendency of losing that, or not having a respect for others, respect for what other people necessarily bring to the table, that don't share your views. That was never the case with Sinai. Whether it was the Bedouins that he maintained relationships with, or friends of every stripe that he would debate, starkly with, but he respected where the person was coming from, even if he disagreed with him. That is an amazing midah. And I think that's what drew me to him, because I very much am passionate about that. I want to close just by saying also that, and this flows from what I just shared, I think that Sinai was an amazing ambassador for Yiddishkeit. I don't think he blossomed until he left New York and moved to, of all places, Arad. And you know, he ended up there for one reason, or he ended up there thinking that he was there because it was circumstantial. But in the end, I think that my sense is that he influenced the lives of so many people who probably had not necessarily favorable perceptions of what a frum Jew is. And I think he changed that. That's a koach. That is a testament to his approach in Yiddishkeit. It's easy to attract one group of people. It's much more difficult for your message to be accepted and received by a spectrum of people. And that was Sinai. Right before he was nifter, as fate would have it, although we had not spoken for years, I sent an email to him. I'm not going to go into the whole storyline, but I sent an email to him. I'll go through it very briefly. My father, who lives in Har Nof, was going to spend Pesach in, of all places, Arad, because there's a Pesach program in Arad, of all places, right before Sinai was nifter. So I told and my father knew Sinai from Flatbush. I told him, listen, you got to be in touch with Sinai. Sinai would love to see you. You would love to see him during Chol Hamoed. You should get together. You're going to be in Arad. I sent an email, my first email, to Sinai in years, a personal email. He responds, and I save the email. Shlomo, you're not going to believe it. Or Shlomi, he called me Shlomi. He said, Shlomi, you're not going to believe it. I just had a mild heart attack, and in parentheses, don't freak out, mild, I'm fine. But I'm going to be in Yerushalayim to have a procedure, so I'm not going to be hosting. So my father didn't meet up with him, but I had this beshert exchange that never would have happened if Hashem didn't orchestrate this odd coincidence of my father going to, of all places, Arad. Anyhow, I found it. So the rest is history. He was nifter after his procedure. I never spoke to him again or emailed again, but I found out from Ellie, who I spoke to, or Ellie or Ann, who I spoke to during Shiva, that while he was in Yerushalayim, they were supposed to host 20 to 30 people at a Seder. And Ellie came into Arad to host that Seder, to pinch hit for Sinai. He was hosting Seders, and he was just an amazing ambassador. And all of the meters that I just described and that you will describe, right, positioned him to do the work that Mamish influenced so many people, and influence that is felt in Shemayim as well as here.